Welcome to Moving Through and Beyond, a podcast dedicated to sharing inspired journeys of redefining life, vision, and purpose after immense hardship and grief. My goal with this podcast is to give you hope and to let my guest journeys inspire you to make the choice to keep looking up. I'm your host, Carey Conley. Hi, everybody. This is Carey Conley, your host of Moving Through and Beyond podcast. And I am so excited to bring on to you a friend of mine that I've known for a very long time. We have lots of history together, having been in the same network marketing company together and doing some events together. That was a long time ago. Wow. That just popped right into my mind. So I want to introduce you guys to my friend, Autumn Shields. Autumn, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I was thinking about that today. It was 20 years ago.
That's insane. And I remember you at that point in your life, were married, had some kids, blended family, as I recall,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. We're both from Colorado. Well, I don't know. Are you originally from Colorado?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
third generation. Yes.
Yeah, that's crazy. And now living where? Belize, Cape Cod.
I'm in Belize in the wintertime and on Cape Cod outside of Boston in the summertime.
That's crazy. And I remember coming to your house when you were packing up. This was how long ago now, Autumn? You were packing up to leave Colorado to move to Maui.
Yes.
And I was so jealous.
Yes, that was a really big move. I didn't know anybody there and packed up my 14-year-old son. And we literally packed up a few suitcases and either sold or gave everything away and went. So.
I remember that. And I remember thinking, wow, how does somebody do that? But I totally get it. What made you decide to do that?
I felt a nudge in my life. I talk about the nudge a lot. Sometimes people call it a tug or, a download or divine intervention, whatever people want to call it. But I just felt the nudge as clear as day that I was supposed to be there and start a nonprofit for high-risk youth and be able to create a company where tourists have more access to like the true Hawaiian culture. And wow. For those of you that can't see me, if you're listening, I am very white and like cannot pronounce like one Hawaiian word. So that was like a big nudge. I was like, I sometimes feel like when we're nudged like that, we just dismiss it because it's not us or it wasn't on our radar or it just wasn't part of my plan for my life. And it's amazing when you follow those nudges, the resources appear. So,
right. I'm curious as a mom, how your son did with the transition.
He did really well. And I think a lot of that is how kids are raised. He was raised in two different households and a lot of transition. So I think that it was easy for him and he needed that time to heal and he needed that time to be away from his everyday and just be able to enjoy being a teenager. So, yeah,
I just wanted to bring that up because I think so many times we feel those nudges and we don't act on them because we think we can, you could have easily said, well, I feel this nudge, but I really don't want to pull my son out of school. He needs to stay here with his community. What is this going to do to him long term? And I'm learning the older I get that you really just have to follow those nudges and figure it out together.
Yes. And I feel like the older I get, I feel like I used to see a door and I'd knock it down. Like I'd kick it down, I'd knock it down. And now I'm learning if a door's closed is probably a reason. But with nudges, I'm learning to follow those a lot more. And it might be something really simple. Like for some reason, I feel like I'm supposed to go to that coffee shop and you're like, I just had coffee. Why would I feel that? It's because maybe you're supposed to meet somebody there that needs you or you're supposed to connect with somebody all the way to big things like literally sell everything, break everything off that's going, right for you in your life and just move. And so everything in between, I fight those nudges a lot. Usually I get the phone call from the nudge, for me, it's God. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, you have the wrong number. Click.
You didn't mean me, really. Really?
Me. I'm busy today. Yep.
And then what I have found, if you ignore the nudge, pretty soon it just becomes like a sledgehammer to the head.
Yes, that's usually me. Usually I'm pretty defiant with it. Yes.
So impressed with that. And, you have quite an interesting background. Before we met, you were doing a whole different career. And I want you to kind of share a little bit about that.
So my first nudge actually was in 8th grade. I had a friend who committed suicide, and most of us in 8th grade had never even been to a funeral, maybe of a grandparent or something, but most of us didn't even know what suicide was, really. And so I had a victim advocate from law enforcement actually come talk to a group of us, and I didn't know what she was or her title, but she came to really do crisis intervention with us and provide resources on how to deal with suicide and talk about that. So it was just an open forum for us to talk. And I remember thinking, I don't know who she is, but I want to be her. And she
Mm.
actually mentored me into the field of victim services, which not all states or countries have it, but it's when you're actually, you're not a counselor and you're not a police officer and you're not a lawyer in court, but you're in all three of those places. So you're doing a lot of crisis intervention. And so I said, I want to do that. And I just followed her lead and went to school and landed that career when I was 22. And so I worked in the Denver area in 3 different local police departments doing crisis intervention, helping crime victims I did it full time for 10 years. And then as I started my own business and network marketing, I still did that part time and or volunteered. So
So many questions I have for you, my friend. Now, first of all, I want to commend you on having a heart and following that tug um, because that's a big, big service to undertake,
and I feel like
right?
when you're called to do something in life and you're doing it, to me, it never felt like work. I was always the first one out of bed and jumped up and went to work. And I've always loved what I did. And, when I was single, it's different when you're young and single and you don't need sleep, but then all of a sudden kids happen. And, as life changes, it changes. But I just felt honored to be in that position.
Mm-hmm. So a lot happened when you were in that field. Some really big things. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So I was pretty young in the field and there's really no formal training. Now they're becoming more formal training where people are actually offering, rather it's 40 hours of courses or something on top of a degree usually. So I did an internship and I had a really great mentor doing my internship that literally you're just out right away, like immediately you just get kind of thrown in versus like police officers have a whole academy to go through. But through that, I learned to respond to all different crimes that take place, but mostly domestic violence, child abuse, sex assault.
Mm-hmm.
And then the big call came and it was Columbine. And
Mm-hmm.
that was only a few years into my career. And it seems like yesterday, which unfortunately it was a long time ago, but that none of us were prepared. I mean, you can't sit through training to prepare you for anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we responded to Columbine, I think I was like second or third on scene as an advocate doing crisis intervention all day and death notifications and helping survivors with resources. And it went on for days and days. And so obviously we learned a lot as responders. We learned what we did right. We learned what we did wrong, a lot of wrong because we had never done it before. And I think the worst thing for families is to go through something, but then have a lot of wrong piled on top of it. It doesn't matter if it's mistakes, authorities make or just lack of experience, but it just makes it that much harder for people. And so we learned a lot. And then as years played out, and unfortunately, as more and more of these crimes continue to happen, we get more training and learn and hopefully be able to serve better. And so I was actually called out. I was actually out of law enforcement, but I was called back out for the Aurora Theatre shooting. And the response was better. And I hope we did better, but it doesn't make it any better, obviously, for families. But
Right. And just for clarification, I can't imagine anybody not knowing what you mean by Columbine, but Columbine High School in Colorado. This happened April. What year was it, Autumn? It's been a while. It's
it's
been
been a
over
long
20
time.
years.
23
Yeah.
years.
To my knowledge, and I could be, I'm betting I'm totally wrong, but I remember this being like the first of what we now see happening all the time of mass shootings in a high school, right?
Yes, I think there's one shooting right before that,
Mm.
but Columbine was the first one of magnitude where people realized like more than one person could actually be killed at a school, and it just jolted us. Obviously as parents
Right.
and community, it just completely jolted us. And I think that just working through that. And what's sad is I actually picked up. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty in tune with what's going on, especially with shootings. Is that I picked up my phone and my friend had posted something on Facebook about like a list of school shootings. So I literally went like this with my thumb, 1, 2, 3, just, and it was single lines. And I was like, well, it's got to be like 4, like 4, like single lines. And I was like 5, 6, 7, 8, and it just kept going. I was like, this isn't even possible. Like,
Right.
this isn't possible.
Right.
There's this many young people in schools that are being affected.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know, why do you think this is happening?
So many reasons, but
Yeah.
obviously mental health is a big thing, and it's easy to just point fingers, and it's easy to, take sides politically over gun control and
Yeah.
different things like that. But to me, I've always had more of like the bird's eye view, with my background in sociology, comparing ourselves to other countries. So instead of pointing fingers in our country and to each other, why isn't it happening in other countries? So what are they doing for gun control? How are they treating their youth? How are youth interacting with social media and each other? What are
Yeah.
mental health services for their youth? And so, and it's obviously not only youth that are doing, shootings, but to me, it's like, what can we learn from other people instead of just pointing fingers? And I think that's
Right.
the biggest thing in our country. We're so busy pointing fingers, we don't learn what's working and try to implement things that are working.
Right. So when you followed your tug to reach out to me to be on here, I was so glad you did. You sent me several statistics that were quite shocking. And the one that I remember the most, Autumn, is the percentage of people by demographic, by age, loneliness, feelings of loneliness. And what surprised me, and I think they talked about this in the article, is that you would think it would be my age group, right? Because
Really
a lot of
old
us,
people, really old people.
yeah. Hey, girl, it's turned
No.
61 next month.
No.
But it's the kids.
It's the kids.
It's the kids, and not just a little percentage. We're talking high percentage of loneliness.
And I think that all children at some time feel out, like I don't fit in, or somebody's more popular, or I got my feelings hurt, or I got left out. Like those are all feelings of loneliness. But to actually feel true loneliness, like they don't belong at home, they don't belong at school, and they're just lonely. And I just remember, and so much of it is because communication is over a phone, and even video games. People don't even get together to play video games anymore. Everyone's sitting in their own rooms. And I remember being a kid, you tried to avoid going in the house because you had to do chores if somebody saw you, and you were always out being social. And there was that level of connection. And even if you felt like out, you're still having that interaction of learning. And that's what we're supposed to do, is be out learning. And so much now is that all the kids are just go to their rooms. And my stepchildren, and now I have bonus children, and people go to their rooms now individually. And I was like, I used to get sent to my room when I was in trouble, but people just hang out in their rooms. There's not that sense of community and running the streets and getting in trouble together and having fun together. And I just feel like that is something that's really lost in America. And I actually saw an Italian speaking on this morning, where he said, they don't, in Italy, they don't have as many therapists. And they're like, everyone in America has a therapist. And they said, because we have friends. And you start asking people about, really, do you have friends? Whether you're young, middle-aged, older, like who are your friends, like real friends? And that article that I sent you also said our relationships, so many of us, they're not meaningful.
Right.
They're just people in our lives.
Right. I agree with that.
Losing that sense of teaching, modeling how to connect, like really connect. Am I modeling that to my children so they know how to connect?
Take the time. Yeah, for sure. I'm curious to know, so go back to, being a first responder, victim advocate. You said that you did a lot of things wrong. And I'm betting that a lot of people would be curious to know what you think that is, because a lot of times, so you can imagine, Autumn, losing both my husband and my son to suicide. The biggest questions I would get from people were, how can I help you? What can I do for you? What matters to you? Because they really don't know.
Right.
They don't know how to respond. They don't know what to do. They don't know what's right or wrong. Right.
And I'm sure you're even better to ask this. I'm sure you have great advice on this, so much more than me. But what I've learned is sometimes it's the simple things of just asking, can I get you a glass of water? It's that simple, of just saying nothing, or just saying, I'm here for you, or I care. I think some harmful things is just say, when people, and it happens to a lot of people, where maybe I've been through something bad in my life and I'll say, oh, Carey, I know how that feels. I know how you feel. Like that's number one. Not even if the exact same thing happened at the exact same time, I don't know how you feel. And so just take it off. Like you can say you empathize, you've been through something, that's just like off. And then we never bring the bigger picture of like God or the universe or something to say, it's God's will. People will say these things like, and it just helps them make sense in their head how something this bad could happen. And so a lot of times when people just kind of blanket things, I think it's hard on families to hear these things, and or you'll just you'll lose somebody else. Somebody will say something like, oh, I just lost my grandma 2 months ago. You're like, not the same thing. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean one grief or one loss is greater or bigger. It's just we don't compare. So
Right.
don't compare losses. And a lot of it's just being there is also not offering advice. So even if I've been through something similar than you, when you're ready for the resources, it's okay. But I had a friend that was actually going through stage 4 cancer, and all of a sudden everybody's his doctor. And it's like, just because you've been through the same thing doesn't mean what like worked for you is going to work for the next person. And
Mm-hmm.
so you just can't put all of that onto somebody and
Right.
expect for them to react. And the other thing is to my third piece of advice would be that everybody processes things so differently, and you don't know, and there's no judgment on it. And people will say, well, like, oh, that was a year ago, or at least, it was, at
Mm-hmm.
least he was older, at least whatever they say is, it's just time does not make sense in grief. And so what somebody might be going through in 2 weeks, it might take somebody else 2 years to even process it or even
Mm-hmm.
realize what's going on in their world. And so those are my three things of advice. I'm
Yeah.
sure you have a lot more.
No, these are so good because, um, the our human nature when something happens to a friend of ours, like they have a loss, like me, is they want to like swoop in and like try and take care of everything for you, or they want to react to you the way they would want somebody to react to them. So what
Yes.
they're thinking about is, this is what I would do, so this is what I'm going to do for you, right? And then they're projecting all that stuff onto you, and then that causes the person who's actually going through the grieving, now I'm worried about you as well.
Yeah,
So
it's such an important part. It's such an important piece because um, one other thing we're taught as crisis responders when we were trained, like on the national level after Columbine, they taught us to ask to give people choices. So, for instance,
mm,
your world is so out of control. You have no control over your life right now. As soon as you hear that news, you just absolutely lose
yeah,
control. And we would make even first responders and or victims make a choice. And it might be something as easy as, I'm going to pick up pizza. Would you like cheese or pepperoni? And a lot of people say, I just, what, I can't, I don't know what, I need you to choose cheese or pepperoni. And it makes people kind of feel like they can get their feet underneath them or take a breath to where, okay, I am in control of this one thing today. I can make
mm,
one choice. And it helps people start using both sides of their brain to start processing what's going on around them. So a lot of times don't swoop in and take all of it. Offer people choices. Would you like me to, I'd love to come by and see you. And I have something to drop off to you. Would you like morning or afternoon or today or tomorrow? Just letting people feel like they have choice in it and not that it's dumped on them.
right, interesting. So in this world we have going on right now with suicide on them, did you deal with some parents who had lost children or spouses who lost? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the initial way that you dealt with that?
We were called out, and obviously all scenes with somebody who's passed is treated, as a, the police have to maintain the actual scene to process it to make sure no criminal
Mm,
activity has happened, and they can do their investigation. So my job was always to, while the police officers were doing their job in interviewing and gathering evidence, it was my job to help the survivors, to help
mm,
family. And
right.
so it's not it's not easy. It's not easy. And there's so many
No.
different circumstances, obviously, why people take their own lives on all different ages. And
Yeah.
um, I would say out of all the cases I've ever been on where I've seen officers break down the most or have a hard
Yeah.
time are suicides.
Yeah. I would imagine. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole other piece that we could do a whole other podcast on, is how do we help the first responders and people like you um, maintain, a healthy mentality after everything you've seen and everything you've been through. What has helped you
Yes.
the most? After seeing all that, what has helped you the most?
I think just surrounding myself with positivity, rather it's people, that
Mm,
actually are there to actually have a real conversation and support each other. But what's amazing for me is like I went through 15 years, and I don't know if you remember this case, but it was a French woman. It was a French case, and it was back when like Dr. Kevorkian was really big and like, being able to choose life. And there was a French mom who was going to pull her son off life support because something medically happened to him. I can't remember, knowing she was going to serve jail time. And they came and arrested her right in his room. And this was probably like a few weeks after I'd like retired, and I lost it. It was like on the news, and I lost it for like 2 weeks, lost it. And a lot of times you see first responders do this, is that, and I've had to deal with other first responders on scene where it's something so little or the news or far removed, but for some reason, all of it just comes up on that, one case where you realize that, for some reason, I've always been fine on scene. And to me, you learn how to debrief, and you take care of yourself mentally, and you talk to the right people, and you take your time for yourself. You have to.
Yeah. It's amazing to me that people like you can talk about the stuff and also offer a lot of advice. It's a special skill, a special gift that you have, Autumn, that you were able to do this for so long. In the world that we've got going on right now, especially with our young adults and our kiddos, is there any advice that you would like to offer up to parents that are starting to worry about their kids?
Well, and thank you so much for the work you're doing, because I feel like I was always on the, after side of it, and you're doing a lot of the before, trying to prevent and intervene and doing things before. And that's where the real work is. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time, out of your life, and you could be doing a million other things and dealing with your own grief and not making the impact you are. So it takes more courage than anybody will ever understand, to do what you're doing. So I think I had 3 friends a few years ago that lost 3 sons right in a row. Like all 3 of my friends lost sons to suicide. And I remember my mom telling me, Autumn, today's bad, but every day is a new day. If you can just give it one more day. And she'd always say that to me. So when this happened, I called my son and I said, you have to promise me one more day. Like, you have to promise me that one more day. Because when you think about the human spirit or the human mind, of what breaks us, causes us to that point of breaking. When you think, I'm not breaking, it can be anything for anybody. It can be a breakup. It can be a loss of a job. It can be mental illness. It can be whatever it is, but it's really big in that moment. And I feel like if people, especially young people, can just buy time, things change so fast in life. And I remember feeling such a big deal in 6th grade when one of my friends told me she didn't want to be my friend anymore. That was it. I was done. I never want to go to school again. My life was over. And then the next day, it's a totally different perspective. So it's just buying that time and having that conversation. It's hard.
It's so good. It's so good. I was talking to somebody else earlier about this, about how I'm seeing, especially the lot of young adults that I'm starting to talk to, Autumn, they are feeling so like if they make any move in any direction, it's a permanent move, and if it fails, they have failed, right? And just paralyzed with fear about taking any step in the direction that they want to go, because it may not work out. And I just love how you're talking about it. Take it one day at a time, because they just don't realize, like I was telling both of them that I'm turning 61 next month and making some big changes that I never thought I was going to make. And it's okay.
Oh my gosh, if I count all the mistakes I made in my life, we all make mistakes. But the other thing is, such a microwave culture, is that if something doesn't happen right away for these kiddos, or they're thinking it's not happening fast enough and good enough for them, and just to give yourself grace. I mean, I don't think that I just saw the cutest TikTok, and I'm sure it's already gone viral, but it's a little guy, he's like 2 years old, and he's really talking about his emotions with his mom. And I'm mad today, and that's an emotion. I'm sad, and that's an emotion. And that it's okay for us to have all of our emotions, and it's okay to teach how to still be mentally strong. But I think that it's so hard when everything is just a comparison game on social media. Like, I have to have it together. I have to have it together. And what if you're not together? And what if you don't look like them? And what if I'm not moving fast enough? And what if I don't throw the ball like the other person does? Whatever it is that it's okay. And we don't teach a lot of grace. And we have to give each other grace, but we also have to learn to give ourselves some grace.
For sure. That is a huge thing. I don't think we're as grace with each other, and especially on ourselves. And I'm hoping that we change the trajectory of that, it's an uphill battle with everything that's going on, like the social media, what's happening in the schools, our families breaking down. Uh, it's not so much the young adults that I'm working with that don't have vision; it's their parents too. So
And it's
kind of
crazy.
crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
And, when you run around stressed out all the time, it's like, really, what are we modeling to our kiddos and how are we connecting? And it's just, to me, it's just that battle of constant connection that I believe we're all losing because it takes time. It takes effort to pick up. I mean, when was the last time we just picked up the phone and called a friend and talked to it for an hour?
Right.
It's like, when do we fit that in? Everything's by the, scheduling and by texting and, that really good connection where you just can laugh or just blow it off or cry together or, just be goofy together or whatever it is to watch those connections. But also, if you see somebody that's not connecting, or if you see somebody that just looks, sometimes it's just a word or just the word hello or just a compliment, just to get outside of ourselves again, especially after COVID, like we are also inside and have gone inward, and it's okay to reach out and just text somebody. I have a friend from high school. We're not even that close. And about twice a year, she just randomly texts me how amazing I am. Makes my day. I'm like, why does she do that? I don't know. And she's completely sincere about it. But what if we just took the time out once a day to just text two people that maybe are really far away from us, but just text two people and let them know how great they are?
Yeah. One of our mutual, yes, one of our mutual friends, Rita Davenport, Autumn, she has a goal to reach out to 3 people a day. And she does it.
I don't know how she does it. And not only I don't know how she does it, but she called me a few weeks ago, and it's like I'm her only person in her whole life. She has that ability to make you feel super special about something maybe really little that you did. And I think so many times we're worried about complimenting other people or holding other people up, because for some reason it makes us feel smaller. It doesn't. It makes you, it makes you a bigger person. But to just reach out and really, really celebrate somebody else, or and it doesn't have to be an accomplishment, right? It just has to be your spirit or your courage or your work you're doing right now. Anything, just to reach out to somebody.
Yep. So important. So you've given us so much great advice, Autumn, but as we kind of close up here, if this is the biggest question again that I get, if I have somebody that I know is struggling, what would be the one thing I would tell them to do to help this other person?
I would just say, I'm here. No advice, and a lot of it is it's even boils down to touch. Some of us are touching, some of us aren't. Maybe I'm a really huggy person and you're not. You don't want to hug. Right. And so it's really just saying, I'm here, and just being there, even silently being there sometimes means a lot. It just means a lot. And also when you're reaching out to say, I don't expect a return message, please don't feel obligated to return a message, because just like you said, then you're worried about the other people. Like, oh, I have to respond because they're, such great people. They reached out to me. Just to, any messages that you're sending, just to say, I don't expect anything. I just want to let you know I'm here. I just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. That's it, in the sentence, because you can always offer more later, but just be careful of blanketing.
I love that. So good. So do you want to mention your podcast, your book, before we wrap up?
Oh, sure. It was a nudge. When I moved to Hawaii, I just felt a nudge to write a book, and I cannot hold still long enough to write a book. Now, I mean, we have voice and stuff, but back then I actually had to had to keyboard it out. But I wrote a book called Living Your Life Alive, and it's taking a lot of our situations and past and figuring out how do we live our best life alive. And so, and now I'm writing my second book on mental toughness. So that's it. I have my podcast is called The Living Alive Show. And Carey, you've been a guest on that. And I believe it's for people that have been through something in their life where they've had to choose to not only move forward, but they're also helping other people. So
yeah, it was such an honor to be on. Thank you. Thanks for being on with me today, Autumn. I appreciate you and really, really appreciate everything that you've done for people in your life. You're amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Carey. I just appreciate everything and all the work you're doing. It has such a huge ripple effect. I know we don't always see it, but know that what you're doing has a ripple effect.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you all listening to me today. Thanks for watching this podcast, Moving Through and Beyond. And I'm here to just keep reminding you to keep looking up. If you found this episode inspiring or helpful, please share it with a friend or a family member. In order to be successful on this mission, I can't do it alone. Connect with me at www.careyconley.com, and don't forget to sign up for my weekly Do It on Purpose newsletter. Let's build this life-giving vision movement together to end this epidemic, save lives, and create purpose.